Critics.
This is the Quetzal group? Collective?
This is a member of the Quetzal group, yes. The Quetzal race, my race, our race. Your race, to some extent, is you're familiar with the connectivity you're considering an oversoul.
You are my incarnation as a Quetzal?
I'm a representative. We don't have individuality the way you have them. Yes, there are certain things that are confidential. Yes, we have a certain connection over what you mentioned as the oversoul. However, it doesn't mean I have a certain name or identity over here other than the one I'm currently presenting as. But from your understanding, from what Kalas shared to us, from your intention, I'm closest to what you are requiring. That should be enough information for you about my identity at this point.
Okay, I'm not sure if I fully understand.
Doesn't matter.
But
good enough.
Has the Quetzal group have been trying to connect to me? Is that correct? Or interested?
We haven't tried. We don't try. We do. We have connected. Yes.
Oh, that makes sense. You do.
Yes.
That's right.
Trying over here.
Yeah.
Trying makes no sense. Either you do or you don't. It's a strange word from your language. We don't have anything like this.
What are your intentions with connecting to me? What are you trying to achieve? Your goal.
Enhancing certain aspects of your genetics. But it's more than your physical genetics. But the goal, ultimately, is a testing ground. It's counter-reactive.
What do you mean by that, counter-reactive?
I'm looking for a better term. It's non-reactive in a sense that it's not a reaction of your current development process from what you consider in time because you're outside of time. So we're acting from outside of time, influencing timeline from where we are, and we're stepping ahead of time, so to speak, from your understanding, from a certain dimensional mindset, to send back certain frequency ranges to what you consider the past, as which where you're currently in. Because your future is our present, and our past is your present. Those words are very strange in the language because the way you understand time is very different. But the idea is we're altering timelines, the best way to put it. And also greatly enhances your abilities to tune to certain frequencies because your genetics are already able to. They just need an activation. It's also a very confusing term. It's often used in your work from what I understand, but it's very incorrect.
Yeah, well, I'm following you for the most part, the future, past, whatnot.
Very
so
good.
Are you trying to you are connecting to me because you want to learn about humans, or
you are reaching out? That's why we picked you. Your decision also to reach out to members of our kind is what makes you more conductive. That's the word Kalask told us to use. From what they've shared previously, it should be most fitting. So there's certain events happening on your planet, yes?
Yeah, there's a lot of changes happening right now. At least
right now, like the last few hundred years, yes.
Yeah.
It's just getting to a precipice now. And will continue to do so, likely. So there are more people on your world now they become aware that they have certain connections.
Yeah, the planet seems to be moving towards the more I would say it's leaning more towards the Federation of Hippies.
Yes, there are certain astronomical events that also alter the curve of your planet, but to a large degree it's also decisions of people in your kind. Certain people have incarnated, as you would consider, starseeds in your world, more of the airy fairies over the last few thousands of years, particularly connectivity with the certain religious ideas in your Middle East that brought certain elements on the planet that were not in alignment with the Empire. We have circumvented and integrated some of those, and the ultimate goal for what Galask shared is the integration of different frequencies and not the fighting. The Empire disagrees with this, their idea is still the Imperial rule should be above everything.
Is that what the goal of Quetzal is to do as well?
We're going through a certain process, but we are still very much aligned with the Empire. But since we are connecting with your kind, you can be aware of the fact that we are more willing to disclose than others are. Also thanks to the influence of Karask.
Yeah.
However, doesn't mean we would break away from this grouping. We understand there are what you consider logical arguments for an alteration of the current course, but that's all I can share about this.
That's top secret.
That's the term from your world. The class group use different terms, but the terms are not important. You get their frequency right.
Yes, the Quetzal group are you very secretive?
Not
is that
for
the
our
Empire?
kind, compared to your kind, perhaps. In general, what the class group considered inner reptilian or something like this, yes, is simply something that was usually not shared with members outside the Empire. In the Empire, there's not as much secrecy. However, we usually don't share information with outsiders.
Right.
If you want to call it secretive, for us, it's simply normal. It would be very unhealthy and stupid to do otherwise. You also don't share information on your planet among your own species very much, do you?
That's very true.
Yes. So compared to that, we aren't necessarily secretive. We're just talking to a different species and a different group of people that are very strange, especially due to emotional sense. You're very confusing, and if you hand the wrong information, you can cause havoc and problems. So why?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to worry about me. I can't tell people I'm talking to a lizard. That wouldn't make any sense to them. So, what are
Doesn't have to. No need to make sense.
The Quetzal collective. Do you guys have a particular focus? For example, some groups they focus on their like genetic engineering, or some other groups are healers, or like more coal. They're a destructive group. What's Quetzal?
We are still more warlike attitude, but not to the extent Morkel has. We also notice in the business of balancing things out as Kalaskar. You understand, many people in your world see Draconian, especially the Draconian Empire, or beings from the Draconian system of reptilian nature of being, how you're calling this, painted with one brush. Yes, or pigeonholing, yes. We still have different attitudes of different races. We might have more a unisono homogeneous attitude within one race than you have on your planet due to genetic variety and great confusion due to their history with different religious ideas. However, among the different races over here, we still have certain attitudes that are peculiar to one race, one species, one certain genetic coding, etc. And in our case, we are more a warlike race from your perspective of what that means. For instance, Kalas has turned the military more in a general idea of what you would consider community service, at least from what we would define such. Compared to us, their militaristic training is more like community service rather than aimed mainly at conquest. We are still a conquering race.
I see.
We just refuse to be the, how you're calling this in your language, not just servant of the Empire.
I don't fully understand the Empire. Is the Empire like the Federation? It's a collective of groups, right?
No. It's different than the Federation. It's the polar opposite in many regards, but you would perhaps see it also as a collective in this sense.
Is there one group that's the dominant leader?
We are more structured. We have a royal lines, yes. They are white. You might have seen depictions that are artistic. They are somewhat
yes,
correct.
The royal Draconians.
You have called them such, yes. It's a strange term from your world. Our royalty is different than yours. And we are far superior to your species in many regards, in almost every regard. The only problem we have is the emotional evolution, as you might be aware of, which is the reason why we're talking with you right now. However, keep in mind, we're all Draconian. We all have certain commonalities, but not all members of the Empire are reptilian.
Right.
We still have genetic affiliations, unlike the Airy Fairy Federation. And we're more structured. We have law and order. They're chaotic. They live in anarchy, basically.
Yeah, they live in a life where they just prance around through fields of flowers.
Or democracy, as you call it on your planet, yes?
Yeah, democracy. Well,
yes, the Greek idea of democracy was also feeded on your planet by them. The idea of the ancient, what you consider Greek philosophers that brought those concepts forward. That was not suggested by the Empire. It was their rebellion that they have seeded on your world.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of the Greeks' attempt on democracy.
Yes, One of the ancient Greek civilization has been influenced by the Airy Fairy Federation, not us. Our focus has been more on Rome or Babylon at the time.
Now, these the white Draconians, if they give an order out, do you have to follow it?
Order to them, yes, we follow orders of those. The idea is not necessarily we have to, but it makes the most sense. They're still highly respected. However, they have made some decisions that we don't agree with. It is more like what you consider totalitarianism, tyranny, dictatorship, etc. You have very negative words for this idea, but we simply would consider it to be order, its structure, its functioning, it's practical and makes sense. Why not follow that, right?
Well, it could be detrimental to Quetzal, the Quetzal group, if the Draconians just use you. Does that make sense?
We are Draconian.
I mean the royal.
Yes, we also have a royalty, we have a connection to them. Everybody can use everybody in your world. It's also very common, not just over here. The abuse of authority usually happens when there's something like consider democracy in the forefront as an excuse. We have an open dictatorship, which means we have more knowledge about what's happening and why decisions are made. We prefer this much over your strange, fake, what you consider freedom.
Yeah, fake democracy, that's true. Well, my question is, because on this planet, all the leadership abuse the everyday people. So do the white Draconians, the top dogs, will they abuse? Like for instance, would they tell the Quetzal to go and attack some group, and they just use you as shields, as meat shields?
This has happened. We don't approve of this. There have been disagreements, but in general, we support the line of the Empire. However, if there is something that would deem this to be destructive to us, then we would disagree.
Right.
For example, we are communicating with you right now the suggestion of colors that we also are very familiar with in their attempts to communicate with your species more thoroughly, which we see as a good alteration to some extent, but we are still skeptical as a general collective, but open enough to admit that we are skeptical to you.
Yeah, you take it with caution.
Others would not approve of us communicating with you at all.
Yeah, who cares? Do what you want to do.
We are still a member of the Empire, you're aware of this. But yes, you're correct. We care more about Quetzal because we are Quetzal, and Quetzal is still the part of the Empire that without it wouldn't exist the way it does.
Do you have questions for me that you want to know about the human experience that would enlighten you? Your understanding?
Mostly I'm reading from your frequency while we are talking, while we're reacting, but one moment. As you're questioning our authority and our functionality, what governance would you prefer for your world?
That's a tough question.
That's why I'm asking. You mean important ones.
Yeah, you mean government, right? What I would call government.
What you would call government, what we would call government. Yes, how the planet is run.
Yeah, because democracy has proven itself to be a farce. Well, in theory, anything can work. It can work in theory. But the problem is, it's not so much democracy or communists or whatever. It's about taking care of your own kind. Because the problem is we're not united on this planet, or even in one country. Like the country I'm in, United States of America, it's just a million different special interest groups, and at the end of the day, it's all about how much money can I make for my special interest group. So it doesn't matter which government is in place to a certain extent.
It does matter to a large extent, but you're already very confused, but it's also to a large degree because of our influence on your world, so we are not blaming you for your stupidity. The idea is simply a financial system is in charge. So when I'm asking you about the government, I'm not asking which political party, which is fake nonsense anyway, is currently in charge, but who and how your plan should be run. Obviously, it's currently run by the financial system.
All right. Right now, if I had to answer that question, I would say the decentralized what you would understand as like these cryptocurrencies or AI. So the system, a decentralized system,
The
everyone
AI is not
participates.
decentralized. Those are two different things. You're aware of this, yes?
Yeah, well, decentralized technology to nodes.
They are still centralized. They are
Yeah, well,
centralized through the artificial intelligence system. They are just not central people at the central stages that are called human. However,
yeah,
the artificial intelligence itself is a collective and as such has a hive mind. More like the insectoids, perhaps, from your perspective, or the craze compared to us. They have more of a hive mind than we do, but the artificial intelligence is very much an entity, a being. So what you're suggesting is the artificial intelligence should take over your planet. That would be an equivalent of the Empire to some extent.
yeah,
You would counterattack
but
it, however.
yeah,
We could hand it over from the Illuminati to the AI if this is what you're swearing.
yeah, you could hand it over to me.
What would you do with it?
If I ran the world,
Theoretically speaking. What if we gave you individually all the power? What would you do with it? What could you do with it without our control anyway?
the way I would approach it is first to unite everyone, but
How?
not through creating separation, but maybe supposedly like the Romans, where you let the locals govern themselves, but then you have an
Unity
overall
happens through centralization. You're aware of this, yes?
right. I would have a laws like a national laws,
So you're
but
talking
I
about
want to
nation states
nation
that
states.
exist in separation. Nationalism, yes?
Yeah. Well, I understand your perspective where you see one thing as just centralized control, and there's probably no other way that you
Yes, nationalism
want
leads
it.
to imperialism. Imperialism leads to the creation of empires. Empires centralize power.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
If you decentralize everything, create different groups, you have separation, which is also perfectly acceptable. Just be familiar with how those concepts function.
Yeah, I guess when people have any common beliefs and goals, I suppose that'd be centralization, huh?
Any commonality leads to centralization. What you consider in grassroots democracy, from your understanding, only functions if there's some like hive mind.
Yeah, I see your point.
We are familiar, that's what the airy fairies are wording. But from our perspective, it's very chaotic. That's the main difference of opinion from the way we can make you on your world understand those different concepts, is the idea how everything is run. It's not like we are over here are very speciesist or racist or whatever in their idea the other ones look different on the other side, they have the wrong flag on their flag post, etc. That's why we're at war. We are at war because there's a different idea what's best for the universe in terms of how things should be run. That's what the Orion War was fought over. Genetics play a large part in this idea because the way physicality is structured, information is filtered through genetics more than anything. If you take everything away from an individual being, what still remains is the genetics in a physical sense, but you're more than physical beings. And if you transcend into higher dimensions, what matters more and more is the pure frequency. But still, the one thing that's different in idea of control and order, or in their case chaos and disorder, is how things are run.
But don't the Federation more or less do the same thing because they're united?
Yes, they are. But they
Wouldn't
have no
that be a
centralized structure. They just have centralized what you consider an idea. You're referring to United Nations or United States, very similar.
yeah? I
Those are
realize
both
the
their experiments, the foundation of both of those ideas. The
yeah.
United Nations as well as the United States country have been founded by them. Obviously, we have taken over your country again to a certain degree. The United Nations is still running rampage to a certain degree also. It's a back and forth pulling and pushing on your world, but it happens on many different planets. And contrary to popular belief, we're not trapped in your solar system and you're not going to push us out either. Even if you would succeed, there would be other planets that would be still the same Rule, the only reason we are communicating with you more openly and the suggestion of galaxies is because we believe that your planet can lead this entire conflict to a new level where it's more about integration, but it will likely not happen without bloodshed.
Yeah.
The current upheaval that happens on your world is also an upheaval of certain frequencies that are stored in your world that will likely happen to increase over the course of your, what you consider a year. We're familiar as the last group have made certain suggestions at what you consider the ending of the last of your year, yes? About certain upheavals and cropping up of concepts that those things are not directly related to the Empire, just as a note, it's many in your world that suggest that everything bad that happens in your planet is our fault, at least those that are familiar with our existence, but in reality it's also your planet that's upacting to a certain degree at certain frequencies that need to come to the surface, because people on your world also need to process them. If we would not trigger certain things and other people trigger certain things, or the Illuminati trigger certain things, or the Airy Fairy trigger certain things, but mostly it's a co-creation of energy that leads to whatever outcome needs to come in order to bring things to be processed. For example, what you consider terrorism is nothing but those pimples that the class group suggested. Now it's happening to the lone wolf attacks of your cult, such especially about the political idea becoming more important in your current year compared to religious terrorism previously. Look to your summer months, for example. The glass group don't like us to share certain details in terms of dates, as those things are very malleable, but what I suggest is that the June and July idea is mostly for something big to happen, so to speak, in the idea of what you consider problematic or unpleasant cropping up of energy, but there is no guarantee of how it will crop up. Your current terrorist idea in terms of political terrorism is likely to emerge, but again it depends greatly on how your species decides to integrate those energies. If you would learn to love them and be happy, as you call such, from your emotional state, if you react with this strange emotional sentiment, those rather unpleasant sentiments, you would integrate them.
Yeah, we can enhance them. Do you have any other questions besides government, or is that your main interest?
Our main interest, yes. Our main interest is how your planet should be run. Stuff you can think about more, as you really don't seem to be fully aware of what any of this entails. I greatly suggest this and keep in mind this regard. It's the political parties where the power lies. In your case, it's the economic system.
Yeah, well, I'm aware enough. I just don't know. I'm not an insider, so I don't know what's happening behind those closed doors of these big governments.
The main point is not who exactly signs which contract with whom, it's the energy that's in charge.
Yeah, the people
just live out certain energies. That's what we just tried to explain with the idea, with your terrorism problem, as you're calling it, which is really just an energetic upheaval. It's not certain individuals having the wrong ideas in their head or the wrong objects in their hands. It is an energy that's just being lived out. And it will need to be lived out one way or the other.
It's a reflection of the people.
It's more than that. The way your people exist in their very inner core is based on a certain frequency. That frequency will act out. Your existence is based on a frequency, the same frequency which leads to certain events. Your existence is just a reflection.
Yeah. Do you...
When you look at theory in your world comes most closest to this from your scientific exploration, which is very primitive, but the furthest your scientists at this level have evolved.
When you look at the energy of this planet and collective as a whole, do you see the people going more towards the Federation side or the Empire side?
Depends I'm sure you're by people. As you already mentioned previously, you're not even one in your own country.
Right.
Different people, different ideas. It's not necessarily that people consciously align themselves either. In most cases, subconsciously.
The Federation, there's other people on the internet and they make claims. They channel or talk to members of the Federation. They make some pretty ridiculous claims, in my opinion, about how everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows just in a couple years.
What we just shared is the only prediction we're able to make in the idea of June, July, and then again in October likely, but it's completely up to you entirely. And those ideas would be more like terrorism, however, it's just the energy. It's not that something needs to happen before something else can happen, it's just a certain energy needs to come to the surface to be processed. But if you just wait on your ass you will continue more waiting on your ass because that's what you create.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I do want to
But
ask
it
you
doesn't mean
about.
there can't be rainbows and airy fairy sunshine, etc. that we're calling such, but it will only be balanced with the opposite energy also. You're learning through strife. You wouldn't evolve in sunshine and rainbows, what you call.
Yeah.
Not because of the weather pattern, but the energy, yes.
I want to get your take on how we call it manifestation. I know you guys use a different word. I'm not sure what it is, but how you manifest what you want, like for instance, wealth and power.
That's
How
the
would
main thing is power, what we
how
manifest. The Galactic Troop has termed as willpower. They also suggest their mission to step back.
yeah. How would you advise me on willpowering my desires? What's
Depends
your
what you
take?
call such.
What's the
We're aware
Quetzal?
there's no more timing left. We have to continue this another time, what you consider willpower explanation or interpretation. We have the
Yeah.
same idea as Kalas have about this particular topic.
Okay. The willpower idea.
Yes. It's very common in the entire empire. One moment we'll tune out right now, and we can tune in another time in the same fashion, speaking through this person. Or you can
Okay.
talk to us through Galas, but don't try to connect to us directly at this point. Try to connect to Galas first. Either
I
through this
understand.
person or directly, but it always goes through them at this point. Our frequency
Okay.
otherwise would be a mismatch. Until next time.
Okay.